Hello everyone and welcome back. This is the April installment of Probing Paul, my monthly Q&A series where I'll be placing myself at your disposal, answering questions submitted by viewers to put my personal knowledge and ability to answer off-the-cuff tech questions to the test. Wish me luck.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by Lexar's NM790 NVMe SSDs, providing lightning-fast storage for the latest generation of gaming and workstation PCs. Featuring a high-bandwidth PCIe Gen 4x4 interface, broad compatibility thanks to the M.2 2280 form factor, and capacities up to 4 terabytes with sequential read speeds up to 7,400 megabytes per second, the NM790 makes no compromises and is conveniently available with or without an integrated heatsink. It's also a perfect pairing for Lexar's stable, reliable, and efficient Thor OC DDR5 memory kits too, so click the sponsor link in the description for more. I'm also going to be doing a little bit of mail time today, so use the timestamps to jump ahead to the question or part of the video you want, and check the video description down below if you want my P.O. Box address to send me stuff. And also a brief explanation for how this works. All the questions I'm answering today were posted in the comment section of last month's Probing Paul, so leave me a comment down below if you have a question that you would like to hear me answer. And also don't forget to check out the Probing Paul playlist if you'd like to go back in time to see all of the times I have been probed. So let's begin with our first question, which technically isn't a question, but it does bring up, I think, a very fundamental question that people who are building PCs have to deal with at some point, and that is form versus function. The initial comment here is from Stephen Smith 9522. So this is a response to last month's Q&A where I was talking about water cooling and recommending that people do not invest in water cooling unless they're already using the best version of whatever thing they are water cooling. So if you're not already using the top tier CPU for the platform you're on, then you shouldn't bother water cooling it. If you're using a lower end one, you should upgrade to the top tier one. Once you're at that point, and again, this is my opinion, then it's okay to invest a little bit more in water cooling, because a typical water cooling setup is going to start at like 80 to 100 bucks if you're talking about an AIO, and ramp up quickly from there if you get into custom water cooling configurations. Stefan disagrees with me. He says, I've always hated hearing don't water cool, just buy the next step up product that looks plain and is slightly faster. Water cooling is fun and the looks are so much better than a plain Jane air build. I'd rather get 160 frames per second instead of 180 if that meant looking at an awesome water cooled system. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, Stefan, and say, I disagree. But he is backed up by Dex1S, who says exactly, they have a 3700X and a 6900 XT with a water block. They don't need the extra frames at the moment since the GPU is doing all of the heavy lifting, which I don't fully understand what he's saying there. But with the FPS counter off, I don't notice a difference. It does look cooler now and I hear nothing from the fans and it's a foot above my head. So I wanted to respond to these comments, specifically because I disagree with them, but also because I wanted to get your guys' feedback on whether you disagree with these too. I come maybe from an older school mentality when it comes to PC building, which is that function is always of primary importance, and it doesn't matter if you have an ugly looking beige box, if you have some kick-ass PC hardware in there that's gonna get you crazy frame rates and do lots of other stuff besides gaming, like video editing, who cares how it looks? Especially if you have the PC somewhere where you're not going to be looking at it all the time. That said, I also do a channel that is primarily about building PCs, and I know that aesthetics are important to lots of people. And a lot of people build systems not just for the satisfaction of building something that can do computing stuff for them, but also building a system that they can look at and say, look, I put that together. I chose these specific components because not only are they powerful, but they look pretty nice too. I invested the extra cash in stuff like RGB lighting or custom water cooling or even just an all-in-one liquid cooler because I thought that looked nicer. For me, all of those things are good. They're like perfectly good reasons to build your own PC, perfectly good reasons to take the extra time to choose some parts that you feel match your aesthetic and is going to build a system that looks good in the end. But I think this really boils down to where you draw the line between function and form. For me, if you start with something that's functional and you do everything you can to get as much performance out of a build as possible, and then you have extra money or extra time or simply that tinkering enthusiast mentality where you want to build a system that's really specific to something that you envision in your head, well then by all means do that. Invest $300 to $500 or $600 in a custom liquid cooling system. Deck out your system with RGB lights and extra fans that don't really do that much in terms of airflow, but give it a nice uniform look with fans everywhere. So for me, all the form stuff is okay as long as you're drawing that line after the function stuff is already taken care of, and as long as the form stuff doesn't detract or take away at all from the function stuff. And that's where my stance derives from with a lot of the AIO liquid coolers that cost $100 to $200 versus perfectly adequate air coolers that cost $30 to $50. I think you should invest that extra money in a better CPU or a better GPU with more cores and threads, or just a higher tier of graphics card versus just going for liquid cooling because you think it looks cool. But as with so many things, this is my opinion, and just as it is somewhat subjective to say that liquid cooling systems universally look better than air cooling systems, because I would disagree with you on that point as well, it's totally fine to disagree with my opinion that you should go all out function before you consider form, versus maybe having a balance between the two, or making some accommodations to get yourself a system that looks the way you want your system to look. But again, I'm super interested to hear what more of you guys think about this, so your comments are very welcome in the comment section down below. And Stefan and Dex, even though I disagreed with you, I really do appreciate you guys commenting on the video. Next question is from Cool Poet. Hey Paul, thanks for doing these. You're welcome. My question is, will there be any break in AM5 motherboard prices? Even the cheapest AM5 board is as expensive as the processor itself, depending on what processor you're getting, of course. I have taken issue with motherboard pricing for a couple years now because it seemed like there was like a definite inflection point right around when AM5 launched, when there was perhaps an informal agreement between the motherboard manufacturers that, hey, we could probably charge more for these things, and suddenly your average motherboard price went from about $200 to $400 to boards that are $500, $600, and $700 being pitched as sort of mid-tier mainstream options, which I still think is ridiculous. I think $200 to $300 for a motherboard should still get you all that you need. And I agree with you that it sucks when you're trying to build a system and you're spending like $200-ish on something like a 7600X, and then you need to spend more than that on your motherboard. Our good friend from Australia, Steve, from the Hardware Unboxed channel, has just recently done yet another budget B650 roundup because there was a new crop of these that came out, and his opinion, if you read the title here, is that they're not very impressive, which kind of sucks because if you're looking for lower prices on AM5 motherboards, then having good budget tier options is a good way to tell manufacturers like, hey, we're gonna recommend this budget one, and we're gonna tell people to avoid all the higher end ones if there is a budget option that works well for most people's needs. Taking a quick glance at some of Steve's testing, he was testing with the Ryzen 9 7950X because the idea here is that if you're investing in a budget motherboard on AM5, you might have in mind an upgrade path to upgrade to a higher core count, or maybe a 9000 series Ryzen processor when they come out. But if your motherboard is already pushing its VRM temperatures to upwards of 90, 100, 118 to 121 C for some of these new gigabyte boards, this is just unacceptable, and it completely negates the whole point of investing in a platform with an upgrade path if your motherboard sucks so bad that you can never upgrade to anything. Fortunately, there are still some reasonable holdouts that are somewhat reasonably priced. The ASRock B650M HDV/M.2 is a good budget option. Likewise, the ASRock B650 PG Lightning performed reasonably well. Of course, the B650 Aorus Elite AX is doing quite well down here, but that's a representation of a more expensive motherboard. For the time being, in terms of basic functionality for AM5, if you're looking towards the budget range with B650, it seems like you have two categories of board that you should choose. A handful, a couple, 2, 3, maybe 4 models that are down under $150, such as the ASRock B650M HDV/M.2, which is currently $120, or spending a bit more money closer to the $200 range for a solidly built mid-tier B650 board such as Gigabyte's B650 Aorus Elite AX, which is about $210 right now. My hope is that this information percolates amongst PC builders enough that people avoid many of this new crop of motherboards that they've made in a very cheap sort of way. And also hopefully that people just generally avoid overpaying for a lot of the ridiculous $400, $500 plus motherboards that are out there that are really very impractical for the amount of money that you pay for them. But unfortunately, just in terms of economics and the way pricing has gone in the past couple years, it seems like we're just kind of stuck in this new dynamic where before you had plenty of solid mid-range motherboard options that were around maybe $130 to $150. Now those have all bumped up to the $170 to $200 range, and the lower cost motherboards just really aren't worth it by and large. But anyway, check out Steve's video if you haven't already. It is linked in the video's description. He does great motherboard reviews, testing the VRMs, especially for anyone who's investing in a budget system now with plans to upgrade in the future. You gotta make sure that the board you get now is gonna be able to handle that upgrade and not throttle itself or run at a lower frequency than you would expect out of the CPU that you upgrade to. Next question from Dewey Sellers 1452. I'm wondering how you like the Corsair chair after you have used it for more than a year. That's this chair I'm sitting in right here, which is the TC200. So we got these for the office when I was doing the office thing for a while last year before I moved back here to the garage. We got a couple of them. Joe has taken the black one to his apartment, so he's using that there now. I have the gray and white one here. Functionally speaking, they're fine. They're totally fine. I haven't had any like back problems or difficulty sitting it for extended periods of time or anything like that. I will say that practically speaking, with the white chair here, my instinct when I'm moving it around is to grab it by the top right here. So the white trim around the edges has started to get a little discolored. I actually noticed that back at the office, so I've tried to grab it by the little slots here instead, just to move it around to try to avoid that, but it has ended up getting a little bit dirty nonetheless. In terms of like ergonomics and everything, like I said, it's fine. I wouldn't say it's awesome. I have had a little bit of a progression with my chairs over the years. This is like 8 or 9 years ago. I started out with the Vertigear SL4000 that I used for quite some time before I finally passed it on at the last fan meetup actually. And again, that one was like fine. It wasn't that great. I eventually had to put a piece of foam on the butt of it to make myself a little bit more comfortable long term. But this is one of those like really typical racing frame chairs that have been, I don't know if I want to use the word popular, but they certainly have been ubiquitous for quite some time. Back in December 2021 though, I got 2 of these Herman Miller Aeron chairs. One of them was for me and one of them was for Joe. I totally said that wrong. I've just realized the TC200, the black one, we didn't give to Joe because Joe has a Herman Miller Aeron at his apartment. The black one, actually, my wife is using in the office now. My Herman Miller Aeron chair is definitely my favorite because it's just like it's one of those office chairs designed for ergonomics, so it has the proper back support. I can actually sit in it, edit, do all that stuff for an extended period of time, and I do notice that it's like a lot easier on my back and on my butt. So I'm happy with that purchase and that upgrade. And it's probably for that reason that I also have a Herman Miller Aeron that I'm not quite as like glowing about the Corsair TC200. Again, they're fine, but I would say that if you are looking for an office chair or a desk chair, and especially if it's something that you're gonna be sitting in for an extended period of time, then I would say opt for something like a Herman Miller Aeron. Of course, they are more expensive. I got mine used, which was nice to not have to pay like $1,000 for it, but it's also used. I can tell it's used, but it was less money. Anyway, I hope that answers your question. Just a couple more questions. Andrew Poptanic5284 says, hey Paul, always love a good probing. Me too. I've been thinking about upgrading to an OLED monitor. They're looking at the MSI MPG 321URX. The room they're in is fairly bright though, and they're concerned about glare. Currently running a Pixio 1440 32-inch 165 Hertz. So this is a new one from MSI. B&H has it for $950, although it is a new item still coming soon. QD OLED panel, 32-inch, 4K, 240 Hertz. Really nice set of specs on this panel, and less than $1,000. So not the cheapest, but this does have like a really nice array of specs. I like the refresh rate. I like that it's OLED, of course. I really like OLED panels. I'm not gonna try to talk you out of this, but the glare question sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole because that is, I think, one of the fundamental questions for people who are looking for a new monitor. Should you go with a matte finish, an anti-glare finish, or should you go with a glossy finish, which can be more reflective but can present more vivid colors and a lot of people say a sharper picture? And I hope this doesn't raise more questions than it answers, but Samsung has a new OLED panel lineup that they are just launching like right now. They're just starting to come out, and they said, ¿Por qué no los dos? These are 3rd generation QD OLED TVs, and there is 2 series of them, the S95D and the S90D. The S95D panels appear to be the one that have this new version of anti-glare that's not technically matte, it is anti-glare though. I believe these were shown off at CES. There have been like a handful of reviews coming in here and there on the S90D versus S95D. The reason I bring up the S90D is because that one is going to be available in a smaller size, that I believe 42 and 48 inches for that one. There are questions about whether they are WOLED or QD OLED. Anyway, like I said, this was a rabbit hole. I don't have like clear answers for you or anything. This is more of like a FYI. This is something that is coming to market and something that you might want to consider if you really want OLED and you're really planning to use it in a room that might be bright or have to deal with glare and reflection. Here's a quick side-by-side test of the Samsung S95D. This is not the S95D, that's one with glare. This is the S95D that has the new anti-glare filter. They say it does not affect the brightness, it is matte so it doesn't reflect, and because peak brightness is one of the weak points of OLED panels in general, it seems really good that Samsung has developed something that can solve the glare problem while also not affecting brightness and still resulting in a nice, crisp, bright picture. What I don't know for sure is if the S90D also has that same anti-glare panel on it, which didn't seem to be made clear by any of the articles I could find. It also doesn't seem to be available for sale right now, so I'm estimating that it's going to be like probably $1,500 to $2,000, which would be a lot more than the MSI panel that you're looking at. So once again, I hope I have not brought up more questions than I have answered, but it is exciting to see the advancement of OLED panels, and I'm actually pretty curious to see how this anti-glare filter looks in person. Next question by Detribo8925. I enjoy these so much. Thank you, Paul. You're very welcome. I've been following you since Newegg days. I commend all your hard work. Really appreciate that. I'm not too sure if anyone has asked in a previous probing, but whatever happened to Arctic Panther? Cheers to you as well. Just a moment. Here we go. Oh God. There's Arctic Panther. Just been hanging out right here behind me for some time. I actually thought that I had accidentally left it outside, but thankfully it hasn't been. It's in here. There, see? It's even still got water in it and everything. The last time I worked on this, I cleaned it out and I switched all the liquid inside from various coolants that I had used to being all water and clear and everything. Doesn't look as cool as when I had like kind of the milky white liquid in there. Also, remember this side panel? I DIY'd this side panel tempered glass window before it was cool. This is like old school tempered glass custom job. So that kind of answers the question, what happened to Arctic Panther? It's still here. It's not currently in use or like plugged in or to be turned on or anything. But this was a long-term project. I built it and upgraded it from between 9 and 5 years ago. Full power supply sleeving, did a case mod, added a USB 3.1 Type-C port to it. And you know, water cooling has its ups and downs, has its pros and cons, build up and stuff like that can occur, especially if you're using coolant and stuff that's not just, oh look, it's my old sink. This is before we had all of our remodel done and everything in our house. But anyway, this is why I say that water cooling is like an enthusiast thing. You need to have extra time, you need to have space to work with, you need to have patience to work around things. This was even just doing something like flushing your radiators and getting them clean properly can take quite some time. So it was a fun project to do. I spilled water, of course, because, you know, that's a thing as well. But July 2018 was the last time I did any like actual serious work on it. So it's getting to be like it's over 5 years now. But anyway, thank you for the question. I took this as an opportunity to do a little bit of a walk down memory lane. And like I said, I still got the system here, so I haven't decided exactly what to do with it. If I want to like power it on and have it in the background here somewhere now that I've rebuilt things and made a little bit more space. It was a really cool long-term project that I would like to revisit at some point, but of course that depends a lot on the time I have, apart from other ongoing projects that are going on, and also me working up the motivation to dive into another custom water-cooled build project, because I haven't done one of those in quite some time either. And my final question, once again, not an actual question, but quite a few comments. This is just a handful of them from the previous Q&A where I showed some of the components for the DIY softbox light that I built, and that video is now live. So if you didn't check it out, definitely take a look. We tried to document the process as well as we could, and it is actually lighting me, at least partially. We're still kind of dialing things in, figuring out the best way to get things lit in here, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm really happy that it's mounted up on the ceiling now and not taking up a bunch of space here or outside on the side yard. And if any of you guys know much about lighting, let me know like your feedback, like was it worth the investment of time? Like does it look that much better? Maybe wait until we do like a build video, because we have some more of those coming up again soon. But thank you guys all for the feedback on that. And again, super happy with how it turned out. All right, let's finish things off with mail time. If you'd like to send me something, my P.O. Box is Paul's Hardware, P.O. Box 4325, Diamond Bar, California, 91765. And you know, just saying, no one has sent me beer in quite some time. But let's start off with a letter. I have a letter here from Old PC Gamer. Let's see what it says. This is actually a tech question. A question about disk management when building a PC. Older systems use MBR, or Master Boot Record, and the new version is GPT for a new drive that you're initializing or a drive that you're installing Windows onto. Why do we need GPT other than having a larger than 2 GB boot drive? So the short answer here is that MBR, or Master Boot Record, is older. It's quite old. In fact, it was publicly introduced in 1983, according to Wikipedia. That was a long time ago. And back in 1983, when they were designing this standard, the idea that we might hit the actual limit of the technology at 2 terabytes was a bit of a pipe dream. That was going to happen way, way, way in the future. And then way, way, way in the future happened, like 30 or 40 years later. And suddenly we started to have mechanical hard drives and then even SSDs that were more than 2 terabytes in capacity. So they developed the GPT standard to replace MBR. There are, of course, a lot of under the hood differences between the two of them, but functionally for a home user who's building a PC, they're going to work the same. The only reason you would need MBR is if you had a drive or a device that you needed to connect to an older system that was so old it couldn't recognize GPT drives. So to answer your question as succinctly as possible, unless you have a system that you know will only recognize an MBR drive, you should just go with GPT now. It's newer and it's better, and you don't need to do any additional formatting. If you're installing Windows 10 or Windows 11, it's just going to go with that by default. And in fact, the only time I have been faced with the choice to choose between MBR and GPT is if I'm initialing a brand new drive that's installed to a system using Windows Disk Management. All right, that's a good question. Next, we have Kirby, who sent me this letter. Kirby is from Florida. We have a pretty straightforward build question here. I would like to build an editing PC for my YouTube channel, Slamming Gears with David, shout out. And this is what I was thinking: 128 gigs of RAM, 850 watt power supply, an AMD 7950X3D, a motherboard with Wi-Fi and Ethernet, and a full-size case. I look forward to your suggestions. Was wondering if you could give my channel a shout out. Already done. So I think we have some good initial choices for the build since it is for editing, but I'm guessing there's also maybe some gaming involved. Lots of RAM is good for editing. You could probably get by with 64 gigs, but if you've got the cash to go for 128, then go for it. 850 watt power supply should be just fine for most configurations in this range. The 7950X3D is a great combination of high core count while also being really capable for gaming. The only thing I think you've left out here is a graphics card. And fortunately, you have some good choices there. Of course, if you want to go all out, just get an RTX 4090, but you're probably going to pay close to $2,000 for that. If you want something a little bit more sensible, but you want to stick to NVIDIA, the 4080 Super is a good choice for around $1,000. And then if you're trying to keep the cost down, but you still want to stick with NVIDIA, then the 4070 Super, I think, is the best kind of bang for the buck NVIDIA GPU that is in the higher end range. Of course, don't rule out your AMD Radeon options as well. You get a little bit more bang for buck there in terms of raw rasterization performance, and you can also get more VRAM, which may or may not help your video editing depending on what software you're using. But there I would consider anything from the 7800 XT, 7900 GRE, 7900 XT, 7900 XTX. The prices for those kind of fluctuate, especially for the higher end models, but if you're looking to spend between $500 and $800 or so, then go with the best graphics card from that group that you can afford. I only had letters for mail time today, but I wanted to actually have something physical to open, so this actually just arrived. I already took it out of the box, and this is an upgrade for the wall-mounted PC that I assembled just a couple weeks ago because it's up on the wall now, and the USB ports are a little bit harder to get to. So I wanted a hub that I could set down here on the desk to plug things in, and I wanted it to be able to do a few different things. So I ended up with this unit from Lionway, which I got from Amazon, of course, but I'll put the link in the video's description. It's a powered hub. It has not 9 ports, but 10 ports, because there's one more there on the back. You've got your USB Type-C upstream as well as your power plug right there. Since we transfer a lot of bulky video files, I wanted to also make sure that it was capable of at least USB 10 gigabits per second. So these top 3 ports here, the 2 Type-Cs and the red one, should do 10 gigabits per second. These 4 blue ones are still going to be USB 3.0, so those will do 5 gigabits per second. And then you've got some down here that are just power for charging only. And those are also 2.4 amps, so they can do faster charging for devices that are capable of it. And I believe since this port is also white, that also applies to that one. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. Other than that, you got an AC adapter and a couple of USB cables that come in the box. So this is yet again like a new thing that just arrived that I haven't tested yet, that I just wanted to show you guys. So Don't accept this as an endorsement or anything. That said, I'm probably gonna plug this in, and if it works, it'll work. I'll tell you guys if for some reason it doesn't work. I'll post an extra comment on the video or something like that. But I'm really happy with how that wall mount situation went with that PC, and it's gonna be even more functional once I get this wired up down here. But that is all the time I have for this episode of Probing Paul. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, for watching, for hitting the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video, for leaving comments in the comment section down below, whether it's feedback on this video or a question for me to answer next month. Closing reminder, if you'd like to help support my channel and get yourself some nice merch, check out my store at paulshardware.net, where you can get yourself nice merch that helps support my channel. And of course, if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel so you can be notified when new videos go live. Thank you once again for watching this video, and we'll see you all in the next one.